Hi, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
If I yell into the microphone, I will probably be getting the feedback. Carbon 14. It must be the warmest summer in 10,000 years because the beast has been worked out of the glacier with whited eyes turned inward and a stomach still full of sweet flowers. It began earlier than even than this as a tunneling itch in a puddle, a cascade that turned itself into taxicabs, ice cream, and two figures in Pompeii, caked in powdered obsidian, same as they were when their mountain exploded. Run the fur past the Geiger counter and sense its prime element. Black and pure, history is a countdown. A march of half-lives receding into the future, even as we take our place in its exploding clock. I had a friend in Houston, and I wrote this poem for him. He had tinnitus. He was a very, very funny guy, but there was something about the way he went through life with his ears ringing all the time that made me write this poem. Cape Cod, a complaint. I watch snails make love without anxiety or release. I do not prove. The sea slumps into me with a short crest and a long, soft crash. It sounds like etc. Is this a promise spoken in the language of ocean in spring or not? The answer to that question is the same question. If only I were farther out on the blubbery Atlantic, near whale's breath and joie de vivre, to flop and sing in the recondite ocean, to be a presence that strains brine through harp-like teeth and tastes sugar in the salt. Divorce. Now only Venus is bright enough to cast a shadow. Its steady light, the last contrast before perfect dark. Everything is raised as when the tides wear away streets and the curbs fall, hydrants 10 feet high, the pipes and valves they plug into, all artifice. A place best left weightless, the inability to hold down food, stomach lining corroding. I tell this story, I can't tell this story, I tell this story again. Now Venus has set. Jupiter high in the east, its collection of satellites like the functional family next door. The universe sprawls, unknown creatures, unwritten rules, the cold, inviting city. Armistice Day, 1970. The porches of the three-story brick hospital were enclosed by screens and bars, and there the veterans of the Great War would sit in their pajamas and smoke, slump in their rocking chairs, not rocking, and wait for the nurses to take them back to their shared rooms. Once, when it was past the usual time, my father and I went inside, wandered the gray halls to try and find my mother among the nurses. She was stooped over a man in a wheelchair, holding his wrist, not counting. I'll be a few more minutes, he's dead. We all waited for the doctor to relieve my mother and write the certificate so we could get out of the hospital, home, past 2 elementary schools, to our neighborhood, where war was painted on stop signs and where old men with thick glasses waited at red lights selling paper flowers. The trouble with paradise. I remember walking over a railroad bridge near Interstate 610 in Houston. It was the middle of summer and I was breathing exhausted. Between the ties, I looked down at a 50-foot drop to a dry stream bed. Traffic crawled along the highway toward the White Towers that were being demolished. The sun disappeared behind the towers, and I realized it would never set that way again. These towers eclipsing the sun in early evening, seen from a railroad bridge in August, me crossing that awful bridge for the last time, grumbling and wanting to move back east. I don't miss it. I wasn't happy being on Earth in the end, and I couldn't wait to leave Texas. Paradise is a lot like Paris, I thought the first few millennia, and dead Parisians agreed. Floor to ceiling, the place is crammed with art. The streets are always being cleaned, and people are so friendly. But the angels have their ways of making you feel uneasy, even when they're being polite. Take your time, they say, because time is all there is. The Watcher, he stops. These last two poems are sonnets for you people playing poetry at home. On clear nights, I wait in dark fields for the sky to glow with the life descending from faint, innumerable stars. Without fear, I long for life across space's vast desert. Some of them tall and implausibly slender, some reptilian with reedy, soothing voices. They wander through galaxies like sleepwalkers, their thoughts and flesh conjoined with void. But heaven, it gives only weather balloons, marsh gas, flocks of birds, crude hoaxes, and I blur, not a bedded rest, but a baleful daze takes me in grass sheathed in hoarfrost. When you and I find in each other some mooring, for this I would trade all the footprints on the moon. If I've counted correctly, this is the last poem. After man. When forests have overgrown the ruins of the last pyramid, and the last sailor forgets, wind-swept without a port his sextant, and against the levees the ocean strives, the tarred over ground will pull up a green living blanket, and bridges warp and tumble into their unmarked rivers, and the free newborn world fill with harmonious breathing. But vine meets briar in prehensile apprehension, and the eagle's nest becomes an archive, and crickets sing the night in Cantonese, while grasshoppers answer in Mandarin. And wherever two living things contend, there they dream us up, and we live